last night I spent perhaps too long because I'm asleep now. I was looking through some information about how governments before this one handled the disaster response in terms of what was given to members of parliament, what was spent in constituencies, the damage to specific sectors, individual sectors, the cumulative hit to GDP, and just the overall response to the relief effort and how that was funded. And it's something I would have done anyway, but if, of course, my steps were hastened by the intervention of the opposition leader in the House of Representatives yesterday, when, in responding to the Prime Minister's statement, the opposition leader, I felt, never used the occasion to maximum effect. And I've asked myself, well, are you overly, well, not even overly harsh, are you harsh in your assessment of Mark Golding's response? Because considering that the Prime Minister came with a prepared speech, with an outline of the speech, because not everything the Prime Minister said was on the paper, but he had his outline, so he could pivot comfortably. Golding's disadvantage was that he didn't have sight of the Prime Minister's statement in sufficient time. So I considered that and I said, yes, your initial assessment is harsh. Don't be so hard on the opposition leader, because clearly a man of his capabilities, had he gotten sight of the Prime Minister's speech beforehand in good time, reasonable time, he would have come with a stronger offering. So that's a fact. I accept that I can't bash him for a response that was less than robust. But one of the things he said to me, which again underscores how difficult this thing of extemporaneous speaking is, especially when you're speaking to things such as the state of an economy, the direction that a government is taking the economy in, the decisions a government is making about fiscal accounts, the priorities that a government is making about spending plans, the ability of a government to marshal resources, attract resources in a period of disaster recovery, and to provide relief to citizens. It is a difficult thing to respond to those things off the top of your head, no matter who you are. And so that was Mr. Golding's challenge yesterday. And because, again, he didn't have sight of the Prime Minister's statement, so he could know exactly what was being said, so he could organize his own thoughts, I thought he fell below the mark. No pun intended. So what exactly bothered me about the opposition leader's response? It was when he used words which appeared to suggest that he was being, I don't want to say pouring scorn, but he was being dismissive of the makeup of the $6.7 billion package. Because in the way he said it, there was not enough grant funding in it. And I said again, and I'm not making excuses for him, you who are quick to criticize and quick to write off, fail to acknowledge and understand. These kind of responses aren't easy. To say the right thing in the wake of a Prime Minister coming to the House of Representatives a month after the most devastating natural disaster in the country's history, to say that the international financial institutions, the IFIs, came together and put together a package of $6.7 billion to which we have access. In 4 weeks, the Prime Minister was able to do that. To respond to that on the spot and say something that holds is not easy. It's very, very difficult. And so again, Golding falling below the mark in his response. You have to understand why. But as he rummaged through his mind for what to say that not enough grant funding is there, which prompted the Prime Minister to say, well, one of the differences between me and Golding is that I don't expect the international financial institutions to give us anything, because you clearly think that they intend that they should give us things. To which Golding raised a point of order, point of clarification, to say, well, that's not what I said, that's not what I meant, but I could understand why it was interpreted that way, because I certainly interpreted it that way as well. So you get a package and you say, we should not celebrate this package of funds because it is more debt on our backs. Can't have been the best thing to say, because it makes it seem as if at another time, for a disaster of a similar scale, a package of funds was received from the international financial institutions where the grant portion was significantly more than the grant portion is for this allocation. Hence, Holness and his team could have done better. That isn't an argument, because there was no such previous time in our history when we would have had a disaster of this scale. That's the first thing. And there was no previous time in our history when we had a major disaster and we were able to pull so much together so quickly after the event. Going further down and away from Golding's struggles with his on-the-spot response in the Parliament, I looked at Hurricane Ivan, which struck on September 10, 2004. And I found a speech that Horace Daly, in his capacity as Labour and Social Security Ministry, gave in the Parliament to announce what the government then, the PNP administration, which had been at 2004 when Ivan struck, it would have been what, 9 and 5, 14. That would have been 15 straight years in office. That administration would have been in power for. Look at what was allocated to people whose homes were either destroyed or damaged. Watch this now. Daly told the House that $80 million would be disbursed to 7,870 families in northern parishes whose homes were severely affected by Hurricane Ivan last September. By the way, this was in May 2005 that he was talking about giving money to persons whose homes were damaged in the September before, several months down the line, okay? That's not to say that it's the first monies that were given, but just to say that this happened at that time. That works out at that time that each family whose home was severely damaged by Hurricane Ivan in September 2024, each of those 7,870 families received at that time, if you just do a straight calculation across the table because you don't know the specific circumstances, but 80 million divided among 7,870 families whose homes were destroyed in northern parishes in September 2004, $10,165 each for each family whose home was severely damaged. If you work it out and say, okay, what was $10,165 then in 2025 dollars? Plug it into the inflation calculator, it would work out that if that same amount was given today, it would be $46,231.46 for each family in northern Jamaica, okay? Damaged by Hurricane Ivan. Daly went further to say 3,000 households in Hanover and St. Anne would be assisted with repairs to their homes under a special United States Agency for International Development, USAID project. Daly informed that budgetary provisions have also been made for persons slated to receive benefits in the minor damage category, and it was expected that payments to all categories would be completed soon. This is him speaking now, in May of 2005 after the hurricane, September 2004. Daly said, so far under the recovery efforts, 439 million in rehabilitation grants have been disbursed to over 46,000 families in southern parishes whose homes were either totally destroyed or severely damaged. 439 million to 46,000 families. Just do a rough calculation. Then that averages at about, then at the time, each family in southern parishes who had their home destroyed or severely damaged received $9,543 each to go towards rehabilitating homes that were damaged or destroyed. That works out in 2025 dollars to be $44,118. Imagine what would happen now if this administration were to give those whose houses are damaged $44,118 as a grant. And I know it is not a straight line comparison, but it's to guide your thought on what government was spending. And you have to remember, because history doesn't lie, the ability of that Patterson administration to spend in 2004, 2005 is much different from this Holness administration's ability to spend now in 2025. So the ability to pay, Vin Edwards always told me that, young man, the greatest thing is the ability to pay. The ability to pay, the ability to spend, significantly different, but just use the numbers as a guide. Contrast that, what that government was able to give to people whose houses were destroyed or severely damaged in 2004 and 2005, to what this government has already given to members of parliament to do various things, or not given them, because one thing is true, and I hear a lot of you saying it, no MP has been given cash in hand. Funds are available through which they can do various things, but no MP, none, has been given cash in hand to spend, okay? But compare what this government has made available to each MP to do certain things in their constituencies. Remember, this administration hasn't reached the part yet where they are giving people grants to rehabilitate their homes. They don't reach to say it, but look at what has been spent already. Before Melissa hit, 1.5 million for emergency items to each MP. Melissa comes, 1.5 million more for the same purposes. For those MPs in the hardest hit constituencies, we all know that each of them got $10 million, $10 million which they could spend through the various channels to do things in the constituency. The 16 constituencies hardest hit will share a pool, a pot of $1 billion for cleanup activities. Only in the 16 hardest hit constituencies is that $1 billion pot to be shared. And then, just yesterday, something that would have missed the media, MPs got a letter telling them that each of the 63 MPs would be getting $10 million each for Christmas cleanup, vector control, and so forth. Already. And remember, the phase of the relief we're in is not the phase where housing grants and so forth are going to be given. Yet, so much money has been spent already. I'm just saying, finally, it is not that one government was wicked in 2004 and 2005 and didn't want to give. That's not the case. They were constrained in their ability to spend. And what they had, that's what they did with it. This government's realities are different. It has given MPs several $1 million each to begin responding to the immediate needs of their constituents. And they're going to go to the phase where people's homes are going to be rebuilt or homes built for them, and others will get monies towards the rehabilitation of their homes. And I'm saying when you put that in context, you realize that this government is not wicked and uncaring, as some would have you believe. And that the resources that are available to the state are, to this point, being put to the use of the people and are being spent. There's a word that is a horse racing term. Mutaimal coming up on Saturday. I'll give this one to you. The funds to this point are being spent judiciously. I'll leave that with you.